With the unveiling of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Limited on Tuesday, July 19th, President Muhammadu Buhari said it will conduct itself in transparency of governance, accountability through liability. On the 49th session of the State House briefing, the Group Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, Malam Kolo Kyari, updated the vision of the new NNPC Limited.
After observing all protocols, Mele spoke on the NNPC Limited's dual road for being an agency and operating as a business enterprises.
As you may be aware, as we all know, I don't think everybody here is well informed, that hitherto the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation is a company funded by government. Companies whose governance resides beyond the company. And also, it has a dual role of being the agency of government and also running a business. And that's clearly a complication that has made it impossible for this company to operate at its optimum over the years, the last 43 years to 44 years. So what changed? Year 2000, government has initiated a program of reform in the oil and gas sector, recognizing that our governance framework was weak, it wasn't world-class, it wasn't delivering the value that is expected, and more than anything, we didn't have a national oil company that is operating commercially. And we are lagging behind. Many of the national oil companies that you are seeing today, that actually started well after us, but we didn't do the catch-up because they have something different.
The transition from corporation to limited liability company, the NNPC Limited, inaugurated on the 19th of July 2022.
The limited liability of NNPC will of course conduct itself under the best international business practices in transparency, governance and commercial viability. President Muhammadu Buhari had on July 1st, 2022 authorized the transfer of assets from the NNPC to its successor company, the NNPC Limited, and steered the implementation leading to the unveiling of Africa's largest NOC. The new company will focus on becoming a dynamic global energy company of choice to deliver energy for today, for tomorrow, and for the days ahead. The country places high premium in creating the right atmosphere that supports investment and growth to boost the economy and continues to play an important role in sustaining global energy requirements.
The Petroleum Industry Act came and converted this company as a matter of requirement to be a limited liability company, which means that it has no recourse to public funds. It is also owned by the 200 million Nigerians, including me and you. And not only that, there is an ownership structure that ensures that this interest is held on behalf of all of us by the Ministry of Petroleum Incorporated and the Ministry of Finance Incorporated in a manner that is supervised by the National Economic Council.
It was in July 2021 that the upper chamber of the National Assembly passed the PIA.
In July 2021, the National Assembly passed the Petroleum Industry Act. And subsequently, on the passage of the Petroleum Industry Act, Mr. President, rightly and courageously endorsed the Petroleum Industry Act and passed it to become the law of the Federation. That means now the Petroleum Industry Act.
Malam Kolo Kyari, the Group Chief Executive Officer of the NNPC Limited, emphasized on the two major laws that guides the Petroleum Act 1967 and the Petroleum Profit Tax Act of 1967.
And I must emphasize that the petroleum industry is governed by two major laws in the past: the Petroleum Act 1967 and the Petroleum Profit Tax Act, also of 1967. And may I seek this opportunity to also mention that there is no substantial change in the Petroleum Act and the Petroleum Profit Tax Act since 1967. Essentially, you are dealing with a very ancient law that does not respond to the realities of today, but we didn't have the courage to change it.
Incorporation of the NNPC Limited was carried out within a specified period of time. Section 54 of PIA law clears that the interest of the NNPC cannot be diluted.
And that's why the passage of the petroleum industry is a major milestone for our country. It is changing the law that everyone else couldn't do. I think that's the best way to put it. Since 1964, no significant amendment has been made to our petroleum laws until Mr. President passed into law the petroleum industry. And that rolled into process a number of things. First of all, the law requires that we must incorporate the NNPC Limited within a certain period of time. And that we did in a very record time. And thereafter, as you will also recall, there's a cutover of the company. Because when you do, you must have assets. So this company, when we incorporated, it didn't have assets. The law also requires that certain assets must be transferred to this company. And also, Mr. President, rightly also transferred the assets of the former NNPC, some of the valued assets that are clearly determined on the basis of best practice that you can find anywhere. A value was put on it, and Mr. President, in his wisdom also, transferred those assets to the NNPC. But that means there's a complete cutover of the NNPC as a corporation to the NNPC Limited as a on the 1st of July. And thereafter, the rest is history. I'm sure many of you were there when we unveiled the NNPC on the 19th of July.
The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, as a dynamic global COI, has a role to play in the lives of Nigerians.
The meaning of this is grave, is huge, and is of substantial value to our country. What it means is that this company must have a different corporate strategy, which we have put in place. Because this is a basic requirement of the Company and Allied Matters Act and every other best practice in the energy sector. It also, you must have a different brand. You can't be what you are always and continue to reflect something else. So we put in place a different brand, which many of you have seen. And then you must have a separate business operating models. Business operating model simply means that you have to stop what you have always done. What we have always done is to respond to moments, emotions, and sometimes very often sub-commercial considerations in our decision-making process. That means you must have a definite business model that will ensure that these businesses are never run on loss. Of course, our ambition is to be the dynamic global company of choice. Today, companies and individuals have choices. As you already seen in the global space, geopolitical issues that are coming up, people have choices. People decide where they want to acquire energy from. And therefore, you must have the reliability of supply, the ability to manage pricing, and also ultimately that your partners can see that it's a long-term partnership that they can have with you. And therefore, when you do this, you can now become the global company of choice.
The Group Chief Executive Officer spoke on climate change.
And more than anything, it must be clear that you are following a path that recognizes the realities of today, which is climate change. So, by the way, climate change is real, energy transition is real, but it must be just. And it's probably not a moment to speak about this, but we are doing everything possible, first of all, to provide the energy of today as we continue to build the capacity and ability to create sustainable energy through our new energy initiative. And you will see this. And therefore, if we do this, we will be able to reliably deliver energy while continuously creating value for our stakeholders and our shareholders particularly.
There was a loss of about 803 billion naira in 2018, which was published on the national dailies.
As I mentioned, we lost 803 billion naira in 2018, and we published it. I'm sure you must have seen those reports. They are still on our webpage. By 2019, we were able to cut down those losses to just 2.3 billion naira.
By the concluding quarter of 2020, there was a profit of 287 billion naira.
And by end of 2020, financial 20, we have published our financial statement audited by the best of class financial institutions. You can check this. And we made a profit of 287 billion naira. And I can tell you, 2021 accounts are ready. We're only waiting for governance and processes. Because of the very fact that we're a Kama company, and we'll publish it. And I can tell you we did better than year 2020.
Oil Surf Limited, the contractor handling the ongoing Ajakuta-Kaduna-Kano AKK gas pipeline project, has said that the project is a good target for European markets in view of exploring opportunities for gas exportation. This is as the single largest gas project in Nigeria, which is important and is expected to stimulate gas infrastructural development and industrialization in the country. This was made known by the chairman of Oilsap Limited, Mr. Emeka Okwuosa, during an interview in Abuja. AKK gas project, when completed, will boost the agricultural and manufacturing sectors' carbon footprint as part of measures to cut down on global warming and provide gas for the generation of power and gas industries. As a result of activities around the AKK project, the country will see over 8 billion standard cubic feet of gas injected into the domestic pipeline. Recall in June 2020, President Muhammadu Buhari flagged off the construction of a 2.8 billion 614 kilometer Ajaokuta-Kaduna-Kano AKK natural gas pipeline, the single biggest gas pipeline project in Nigeria's history in Ajaokuta, Kogi State, Ariga-Chikun, Kaduna State. The project, which took off after months of discussion in out of the country, is expected to carry gas between the southern and northern part of the country and will eventually extend to North Africa. The 614 kilometers long natural gas pipeline of the Trans-Nigeria Gas Pipeline (TNGP) project is to be done on a build and transfer public-private partnership (PPP) basis. It will transport 3,500 million metric standard cubic feet per day of the dehydrated gas from several gas gathering projects located in southern Nigeria. Also, in June 2021, the federal government revealed that it is looking at covering the trans-Saharan and European markets with the ongoing construction of the Ajaokuta-Kaduna-Kano gas pipeline, popularly known as AKK gas pipeline.
But as we do this, one major thing that is real is energy poverty in our country. And there's no way you can close that gap except you focus on what you have. And what we have is enormous gas resources that we have in this country. This country has enormous resources. We have always focused on the liquids. We have always focused on today so that we can have the cash that will continue to things that we have always done over the years, but without focusing on the new energy sources. And the only way you can achieve this is to make sure that you access the gas resources that you have.
Nigeria is blessed with enormous gas resources, among other mineral resources. The IGHF completed 100 MMSCF in Erodo, Edo State. The AKK ongoing in Abuja, Kaduna, Kano, ongoing Obiafu, Obirukun, Oben Gas Pipeline Project, progressing Trans-Sahara Gas Pipeline, the Nigeria-Morocco Gas Pipeline, the NNNG, other gas projects in sight are mini LNGs gas, methanol gas to urea.
On the need to fix up the Nigerian refineries and put a halt to importing the petroleum products.
Big question. Everybody will say, why are you importing petroleum product? Yeah, because you are not processing internally. Needless to lament again. Our refineries are not functioning today. We deliberately shut them down because it didn't make any further sense for you to take in example $100 oil into a refinery and the product it brings out is $70. This is for very many reasons, very many years of neglect that has crystallized into an inability of this plant to perform optimally. It's still lamentation. We are not absolving ourselves from that responsibility or that liability. It is real. But what is very, very obvious is that the very fact that this company wasn't operating as a business was the key reason, because decisions cannot be made. Sometimes, even to put in place a contract to replace a part will take you 10 months to do. And the refineries don't wait for you. And overall, you ended up having a situation where you are unable to make it optimally processed, and we shut it down.
On the commencement of rehabilitation of Port Harcourt and Warri refineries,
and now we are very confident that we are restoring it back to at least 90% of their installed capacities. We already have contracts in place. Contractors, I will also invite you at your right time, I will discuss with the chairman, that you can come and see what is happening in Port Harcourt refinery. We will get it back.
On Colemani discoveries, confirmed discovery of commercial activity of hydrocarbon located 700 kilometers from the coast, necessitating integrated access development strategy.
Additional of 150 million liters capacity committed to expanding the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation retail footprint to reach 1,500 stations by the end of 2022. The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited on Friday launched an application platform to monitor crude oil theft in the country. The company launched the app in Abuja at the signing of renewed production sharing contracts (PSCs) agreements between NNPC Limited and its partners in oil mining leases. The platform, Crude Theft Monitoring Applications, according to the NNPC Limited, was created for members of host communities and other Nigerians to report incidents of oil theft and get rewarded. The Group Chief Executive Officer of the NNPC Limited, Kyari, had in April disclosed that Nigeria lost $4 billion to oil theft at the rate of 200,000 barrels per day in 2021. He said the country already lost $1.5 billion so far in 2022 because pipeline vandalism has escalated. Mr. Kyari said the country was losing 95% of oil production to oil thieves at Bonny Terminal in Rivers State. Federal government, in its recent draft fiscal strategy paper for 2023 through 2025, presented by the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, said that its oil revenue underperformed due to significant production shortfalls, such as short in resulting from pipeline vandalism and crude oil theft. Speaking at the launch, Mr. Kyari said the actions of vandals on pipelines have become a difficult thing to deal with. There are still ongoing activities of oil thieves and vandals on our pipelines and assets, very visible in the form of illegal refineries that are continuously put up in some locations and insertions into our pipeline network.
As you may also be aware, because of the very unfortunate acts of vandals along our major pipelines, from Atlas Cop all the way to Ibadan, and all the others connecting all the 27 depots that we have across the country, none of them can take delivery of product today. And the reason is very simple. For some of the lines, for instance, from Warri to Benin, we haven't operated line for 15 years. Every molecule of product that you put gets lost. And of course, you remember the sad incidents of the fire incidents around, I can't remember, it's very close to Warri, it's close to Saple, that killed so many people. So we have to shut it down. And as we speak, ladies and gentlemen, the level of losses that we have on our pipeline, product pipeline, and I'm sure you may have seen it, and I'll invite you at the right time, we can take a look at it jointly. You remember that in Lagos area, when a fire outbreak happened in one of our pipelines, now we discovered that some of the pipelines are actually connected into individuals' homes. And not only that, and without really, with all sensitivity to our religious beliefs, some of the pipelines and some of the products that we found are actually in churches and in mosques. That means that everybody is involved. There is no way you will take product, bring in trucks in populated neighborhood, load it and leave without everybody else knowing about it. That everybody includes members of the community, members of the religious leadership, and also, and most likely, government officials of all natures, including security agency personnel. They are everywhere.
On the concluding aspect, the Group Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, Malam Kyari, was asked on efforts to construct the Sahara pipelines but not reconstruction of the vandalized pipelines, and also asked on Tompolo, the Group Chief Executive Officer said.
Part of the security intervention that we are doing is end-to-end. You must involve community members, you must involve government security agencies, you must deploy technology, and you must employ other soft means of ensuring that you are able to contain end-to-end, including the engagement of community members. What we did is to do three things. First, to ensure the government security agencies play their part. We have our Navy, we have the Army, we have the Department of Security Service. They are doing excellent job of containing this. But as you do this, sustenance is everything. And therefore, we also decided that we need private contractors to man the right of way and also operate outside the right of way, so that they can also join us to manage members of the community. And we don't have access to that. And therefore, we put up a framework where contractors were selected through a tender process, or people who can do it. Not everyone can do it. And Tompolo has just mentioned, we are dealing with corporate entities. He may have interest in the company, but we're not dealing with Tompolo. But we know that he has interest in that company. We know that we're engaging all other individuals who will be of help to us in this situation. This has happened severally over time, and the end result was that it was contained under a process like this, and we believe that we have taken the right decision. Folashade, first of all, let me correct something. I didn't say Port Harcourt Refinery is 90% completed. I said that we'll restore them to 90% of installed capacity. That's the minimum we'll deliver. Thank you very much. And then, of course, you asked a question around borrowing for the refinery. We're borrowing from the Afrexim Bank. And we also borrowed $1 billion for this purpose. Thank you very much. I hope this answers your question. And gentleman from VOA, why are we not able to reconstruct our pipeline, yet we are now embarking on construction of gas pipelines to other countries? If you had me clear, what I said is that we are doing every one of them concurrently. We are not leaving any one of them. And as you are aware, gas is the next transition fuel globally. Is where your money will come from. You will be stranded with your oil in another 30 years, but you won't be stranded with gas even in 50 years to come. And that's why we're building those infrastructure to make sure that Nigerians of tomorrow will be able to benefit from these resources today, while we're also constructing our pipeline. As I mentioned, we're doing a build, operate, and transfer program for the pipeline networks, and we're replacing them. So we have not abandoned them. Then the gentleman from Reuters, he said delay in asset sale will hinder investment in the oil and gas sector. By the way, divestment is the right of any partner. As a matter of fact, the Petroleum Industry Act allows the government even to divest its interest in the joint ventures today. So anyone can divest interest in any business. But divestment always has rules, has processes. We are now NNPC Limited. We're a commercial company. We will do everything possible to protect our commercial interests, and that will have nothing to do with stifling investment in the industry, because we already have structure and processes that are in place to ensure that these assets continue to produce. So nothing has stopped. Change of ownership doesn't stop business. And then, of course, the gentleman from Silverbat, you asked why haven't we named the people who are involved in this. I told you there are 122 arrests. I'm sure you are also very obvious that it is not NNPC that will make announcement of criminals and culprits. But I know that names exist. They will be named, but definitely the most important thing to do is to prosecute them and show to the world that it's wrong to do this, and that if you do, the law will catch up with them. But the most important thing for us to follow through is to make sure that there is prosecution, and once they are prosecuted, they will be lined up, and everybody will see them, no matter who they are. So first, let me answer the issue around stoppage of importation of petroleum product. Even if all our 4 refineries in 3 locations, by the way, I'm sure you are aware that in Port Harcourt you have 2 refineries, are operating at 90% of installed capacity, they will only be able to raise 18 million liters of petroleum motor spirit, PMS of petrol. That means that even if all of them are working today, you will still have a net deficit of PMS to import into this country. This is what it means. Because our population has grown, demand has grown, the middle class has grown, I'm sure everybody here owns 1 or 2 cars, and so on and so forth. And as such that the volume of petroleum motor spirit required in this country has grown almost exponentially, because there is clearly an exponential growth in our ability our needs for petroleum motor spirit. So even if they all come back, you're not going to stop importation of petroleum product. But happily also, NNPC owns 20% equity in the Dangote refinery. And not only that, and we're very proud of this, we are not only owing 20% equity, we have the first right of refusal to supply crude oil into that plant. But we saw this energy transition challenge coming. We knew that time will come when you will look for people who will buy your crude oil you will not find. And that means that we have locked down ability to sell crude oil for 300,000 barrels minimum by right for the next 20 years. And also, by right also, we have access to 20% of the production from that plant. That means that whatever it does, we have a right to take 20% of that production as our part of our equity. And this refinery, if it does come up, and it will come up because we are on the board of that company now, we know what is happening now, that it will come on stream by the mid of next year. Projection is first quarter, but we think that it can come up latest by the end of mid of next year. If it does, this refinery alone, because it has 650,000 per barrel capacity and a different technology, which means that it can crack the crude in a manner that you can have more gasoline than a typical refinery. That means that that refinery has ability to produce up to 50 million liters of PMS. So the combination of that and our own ability to bring back our refinery will completely eliminate any importation of petroleum product into this country next year. You will not see any importation into this country next year. This is very practical. This is possible. As a matter of fact, when we are done with our own refineries and the Dangote refinery, very many other small initiatives that we are doing, small modular condensate refineries that we are building, if that happens, and we are very optimistic it will happen, you will see that this country will now be a net exporter. As a matter of fact, it will be a hub of export of petroleum product, not just to the West African sub-region, but to the rest of the world. This will happen. The flow of supply will change. By middle of next year, it will change. So you will have no need for importation of petroleum product into this country by middle. I don't know this. I think this combination answers all your questions. Thank you very much. Then back to TBC Femi. It's how soon will shares be listed? I hope you are not going to borrow money today to buy shares. But for you to list shares, you must be IPO ready. IPO ready means that you must have system and processes. You must have governance, you must have assets, you must have the correct and indisputable valuation that the potential buyers will see, the stock exchange will demand for all this, and then ultimately you can now list your shares. And that is why I said earlier when I was speaking, that we will be IPO ready by the middle of next year. It means that we'll have system, processes, policies, governance, assets that we can show, valuation that are reliable, that people can test, as we already have today, and also the right kind of governance structure, and also a risk management system. That are basic requirements of IPOs, and all this will be ready by the middle of next year, and at the choice of its shareholders, that it can be listed at any time, because the law section 54 of the PI is clearly said that you can dilute the interest of this company by its shareholder. The shareholders are the 200 million Nigerians, represented in today's context by the Ministry of Petroleum Incorporated and the Ministry of Finance. Very understandable, and that ties to the question from the lady from Bloomberg, I think. Yes, she was asking. Somebody asked why the board. It's Dr. Leon. Sorry, I remember. Yeah, Dr. Leon asked the question: why would the board be appointed by government? Board of companies are always appointed by shareholders. Shareholders are always represented. This is typical. If anyone here doesn't own a company, just go and try to incorporate a company. They will tell you that you must have shareholders. Those shareholders will appoint the board of those companies. In today's context, the Ministry of Petroleum Incorporated and Ministry of is holding in trust for the Federation, but they cannot do anything except the shareholders of record agree, which is the 200 million Nigerians, and that is why the PIA provided for a leverage of the National Economic Council to have a say in this process. And therefore, the board of the companies by law is required that Mr. President appoints the board of these companies on behalf of all of us. That whenever you dilute interest, even if it is 10% interest in these companies, that right for government to appoint vanishes automatically. It now becomes a matter for the shareholders, which includes private owners of this company, will do. So this will come, Dr. Leon, not today's content, we are transiting, but as soon as you hear we are ready for IPO, it's all over also. The board will be appointed by the shareholders, which will include private equity holders. And let me just follow up to answer your question around remittances to FAC in the historical NMPC. To the best of our knowledge, we have reconciled our position with FAC. We have no liabilities that we are carrying forward to this new company. And as a matter of fact, and it's very popular now, NMPC is not remitting any money to the Federation account. That is very correct. But what is also never mentioned is that we are providing petroleum metal spirit to this country as a matter of a commercial relationship between us and this federation, all of us, that we are paying market price for petroleum metal spirit, as we all know. We all know, if some of you buy EJO, you will know that EJO price is not always far from PMS price, and you know what the price of PMS is. So whenever you do this, and you sell at some market price, and once there is no direct payments to any company, then the only way we can recover that cost is for us to hold back our fiscal obligations, which is taxes and royalties, so that we can use it to breach that payment that we are doing on behalf of all of us, and as a matter of responsibility, as a matter of law, if you may know. The Appropriation Act clearly provided for subsidy on PMS. Appropriation Act is the act of the National Assembly. That means it represents all of us, and we are merely executing the provisions of the law, and there is no way you can do both of them. You cannot pay your fiscal responsibilities and also find money and pay for the PMS subsidies that we are all carrying on behalf of all of us. So it's very understandable. As a matter of fact, the level of subsidy that we are seeing because of the price differential versus the revenue that we are able to generate, which is associated with some of the crude oil thefts that I have mentioned to you, is no longer practical for our fiscal responsibility to even cover those costs. But we are managing it. We are here also by law. We are required to ensure energy security for our country. We'll do everything possible, and we have no fears around this, and we'll continue to serve this country as a company. And the National Reserve Company, every country in the world has a National Reserve Company. Every country, in a different manner. And there are very many ways of doing this. One is to require petroleum product marketing companies to maintain minimum reserve in their depots on behalf of the state. Of course, that means there's a holding cost, and government will be ready to pay for that. The second way is government to directly procure those products and keep them somewhere. And that is why you have the network of the pipelines that we have and the depots that we have. The real intention is first to bring product close to its consumers, and secondly, to maintain them as national reserve locations. So we'll bring back the pipelines so that these depots will serve that purpose. We have built another depot, a reserve facility in Atlas Cove. It's due for commissioning. We have completed it. And the end result is that you will now have a network of pipelines and depots that will now manage the national reserve on behalf of all of us. It's typically a government responsibility. It can be outsourced to private companies. It can also be done by an agency of government. In some countries, it is done by the military. The military maintains the national strategic reserve of petroleum product. This is not the situation we are dealing with currently. We are establishing the National Reserve Company, which will manage on behalf of the state, and will defer to any decision the state will make. In the interim, there's no contrary view around how else we can do it. And Hassan, you asked a question around why you paying salary on a refinery that is working, is not working. This question has been raised severally in very many fora in the National Assembly. You have two options. When you have a refinery that is not working, typically what you do is called mothballing. Is that you pull them down, bring them into crates, and ask everybody to go. And then you have security men to watch it. Otherwise, the second option you have is to keep them as we are doing. You continue to mothball them. That means that you lubricate the parts that you must lubricate. You test run some of the parts that you have to continue to run. Otherwise, the day you want it, it won't work. So it's the second option we are doing, that we have to keep it. We are not ready to bring them down into pieces. Typically, when you bring them down into crates, you never want to bring them back. But we know that we will bring them back. We know that we're working on them. And that means that you are keeping personnel to continue to do those activities. And more than anything, that the other implication is that you sack everybody that is there so that you can stop the salaries bill. And this also is a matter that has gone to the National Assembly, and the informed position that we have, even by the clear wisdom of the National Assembly, that we can't do this at this point in time. And that's why we're paying the salary. You have to keep it. But what we also did is that we have minimized that. We have moved around many of the staff to locations where they will be put into work, and we'll continue to do this as we know that ultimately the refineries will now be run on an O&M basis. So we'll have no need for this cost as we go forward. It will continue to diminish. There are retirements that are happening as a result of age and very many other considerations, and these numbers are coming down by virtue of statutory requirements that this should happen. I think I've answered all the questions of the payment. Yes. Doctors, around what are we doing to, have we put up any policies to protect the environment? There's no shortage of policies. First of all, we're a business. We're also regulated. There are several institutions of government, NOSDRA, Ministry of Environment, and so many other interventions. The authority, which is responsible for the downstream, and also the commission responsible for the upstream operations. There are several policies and regulations around protection of the environment, and we'll comply with all of them. But what we can't manage is when vandals come, because that is no longer operations now, it is acts of vandal. So you react to what they do. That means it's contentment and handling of what others have done, which is why there are several steps all companies do, including our company, to make sure that whenever such remediation takes place, we stop the leakage, we recover all the crude that is possible to be recovered, and we'll continue to work to make sure that we restore the refinery. As I've said earlier, the scale of what we are seeing here, no matter what you do, the reaction time for the scale of what we are seeing is the capacity is a key issue, and we'll continue to work on it. Yes, there are policies to do this. And of course, you also asked a question, I think there's a question around alternative to the burning. So what else can we do other than burning this crude oil? What you do, you can collect them in a location, and then now take them to a refinery or take them to another vessel. Very, very complicated. If you see the statistics I gave you, you have 450 boats, all those canoes and vessels. Just imagine how you can manage this. The alternative, the solution is stop the leakage. Stop the tape, and then they'll vanish, so that you don't have to do anything. This is really the reality that we're dealing with. Then, Tony, a question around excess crude and how does the realities of the NNPC affect the excess crude account? The excess crude account, as you may be aware, is the difference between the budgeted sum and then the available resources, which sometimes, because of price changes, it can come beyond this. And it's flown into the excess crude account by the Federal Ministry of Finance always. So it is not an NNPC activity. Our obligation is to deliver those resources to the Federation account, and they will do this. What is also different by law now, which connects to the question asked around the PIA, is that the law provides that whenever there is a royalty on price, which means that there is excess value that is delivered, it goes into the sovereign wealth fund. And also the sovereign wealth fund by law also can be funded either by the excess crude oil account or by any means that the National Economic Council decides to fund. So there is no limitation to how the sovereign wealth fund can be funded. But there's clear provision on the PIA that says that certain amount of money must go directly to the sovereign wealth fund. That was not there, was not there before. And Charles, I am very, very convinced that the Chief of Naval Staff is misquoted. He could not have said that NNPC is conniving to steal from the terminal. I'm very, very doubtful, and I have very fruitful and constant engagement with the Chief of Naval Staff. The vessel in question was the vessel that is arrested at Equatorial Guinea. If you recall, the vessel came too early. It should not have been here. Outside is Lekan. Vessels can come and stay in your international waters until you call them to come in. This is typical practice. It is not only this vessel that does this. It's a very, very typical process. But once vessels move into your territorial waters, then they become suspect. As at that point in time, we have said it clearly that that vessel did not have clearance. I wrote to the Chief of Naval Staff that this vessel did not have clearance, but that we knew that it is coming, but it did not have clearance. And it is also confirmed, and I'm sure you have seen this, that this vessel did not load crude oil from the Akpo terminal. This is very, very correct, but I can confirm. Hold on. Yes, listen. Listen, I'm not defending the vessel. Let me tell you why vessel movement. I think it's important for all of us to also learn how vessel nominations take place. 2 weeks before you are loading, you are supposed to tell your seller, in this case NNPC or any of our partners, that in this case this vessel was actually not coming to load NNPC's oil, it's loading our partner oil. So you are supposed to declare that your vessel has been nominated. And once you nominate that vessel, NNPC will send that vessel to the terminal operator, because not every vessel can go to every terminal because of safety issues. So the vessel terminal operator must confirm to you that this vessel can come to the terminal before it can come. So typically companies nominate 2 to 3 vessels for each operation. Sometimes only one, because some vessels have history, they have gone to that terminal that they know that the operator will not refuse to accept this. So companies must nominate vessel ahead of their coming. And then the process happens. We write to the terminal, if it is our nomination, we write to the terminal operator. Once the terminal operator is okay, they will inform us. Then we will inform the regulatory authorities. In this case, the Commission, which is the regulatory authority, and the Nigerian Navy, that this vessel is known to us, it's committing a legitimate business, offer it clearance for it to go to VAT at any terminal. The vessel in question has not passed through this process before it came into our territorial waters. And the claim they made, which was debunked by the Navy and which we agree, was that they are afraid of a pirate attack. And we also know that the pirate attacks have minimized recently in our country, and those incidents are very, 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 very minimal. I'm not sure NNPC has ever or will ever facilitate stealing of crude oil. And I've said it over and over again that the process of stealing of crude oil is beyond any one individual today. It's end to end. From the producing company, I've said it over and over, from the producing companies, from NNPC personnel, from security men, from members of community, every cadre of people that can, from the elites in the community, in the society, and I'm going to address that, everybody has some involvement. Are they doing it on behalf of the institutions? Absolutely not. There are criminals everywhere, and there are also good people everywhere. And I believe that majority of my workers are good people. But I'm not saying that there are no bad people in NNPC. They may be there, and they will be the part of the people that I told you will deal with them. Government will deal with them, will take them out. This is the point that I was trying to make. And this connects to the question around some big men. I think somebody asked a question around some big men that are doing and were doing nothing about it. Please, if you know, tell us now. I can tell you they will not sleep in their houses today. I can tell you this. No one is exempt. If it is me, say it. I will not sleep in my house today. So no one is exempt. Everyone will be followed. That is why I said that the EFCC is following the cash. People who go and build houses without income. People who build skyscrapers without any legitimate business. People who buy cars that they know that not everybody knows that they can afford. Lifestyle changes that you can't explain. All these things are being followed, and we know that the law will catch up with all these people, and they will be disclosed, and they will be prosecuted. Then Jet A1 and diesel supply. What did you say? Okay, yes, I'm sure you are referring to the question you asked the Chief of Naval Staff, where he made statements around the volume of crude oil. Let us distinguish issues. When you say you are losing 700,000 barrels per day of crude oil, we mean it. This is opportunity lost. There is no company that will produce oil and then you lose 80% of that and continue to produce the oil. So we deliberately shut down the pipelines whenever we see these infractions getting to a limit that we cannot control, that are not possible to be managed. So that means as we speak today, we know for sure there is at least 700 lock-ins that we could have produced that we can't do because we cannot guarantee the safety of the pipeline. Of course, there are some technical issues. Needless to say that not 100% of that is due to theft. There are technical issues. We are responding to the technical issue, but majority of this is associated with reasons around crude oil theft. Now, when you say how much of it is stolen, and I've seen the statistics, it is impossible to have barges sailing 200,000 barrels per day. I agree with the Chief of Naval Staff. You need thousands of barges to do this. But don't forget also that we have seen lines connected that have shown you the size of the pipeline itself running for 3 to 4 kilometers. It means that it goes to, can you go back? It goes to some of those barges loaded directly. Can you go back? I'll show you the vessel. Go back. No, the vessel. So this vessel, as you can see, when you lay pipeline and hoses, you can fill them and go. So this is not a barge. So when this happens, and which I also accepted, that enormous work has been done by the Navy, and they have contained the marine activity, but this is reality. These were arrested by the Navy carrying crude oil. So if you can do this, we believe very strongly that up to 200,000 barrels of oil is stolen, but not in barges. And of course, this is being contained. I think this is the point that I'm trying to. There's no distinction between what the Chief of Naval Staff has said and what I'm saying now, because it is true that you cannot do it with barges. But when you do at vessels of this nature, which is arrested by the Navy, and also when you have 295 or so cooking pots, even if they are taking 500 barrels per day, in each of these locations, you can see the scale of losses. So whether they are able to process and put it in the market is a different matter, but it's stolen. Thank you very much. Question around why subsidy when the PIA said petroleum will be priced at commercial. Yes, the PIA is very clear that PMS or petroleum product will be priced at the market. But the PIA did not exclude any intervention of government. Government can decide to give any form of relief to its citizen. And that is why the the Appropriation Act 2022 clearly provided for this, and we are simply implementing this. So it's not incomplete with the PIA. Thank you very much.